And Barra Church, thank you. Appreciate the support and the help that we have for the audio visual, the facility. This is a great room to meet in, isn't it? I mean, it's not quite as intimate as being over at Meet You Anywhere Barbecue, right? That was a really cool environment. Maybe we'll see who comes in afterwards. Maybe we'll still be able to get that room back if somebody takes it over as a restaurant. But this is not a bad place to meet. So now, Stephen, come on up. It's my honor to introduce Stephen Preston. I first met Stephen at the climbing gym, where he was doing, if I remember right, you were doing volunteer work with a group that works with kids that have disabilities.
Yeah, not yet. But at the time, I was just climbing and walked
Just climbing,
up.
yeah. So he saw probably our veteran shirt, or Gallant Few shirt, and said, hey, what's that?
Yeah.
And so since then, he's got pulled in. I don't know what he's going to talk about, so I'm not going to steal his thunder. But I will tell you, phenomenal cook. When we go to, I don't want to overcommit you again. But the last 2 years when we've gone to Colorado for Spirit of Derby, he has led the cooking efforts, and the food out there have been no complaints. So happy that you're here, happy that you're telling your story today, and I look forward to hearing it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so had I known walking up and saying hi to you guys was going to get me here, I might have rethought it. But it's been a fun run. Zach, thanks for asking me to do this. I appreciate it. Sure. It's a little bit of out of my comfort zone, so thank you all very much. It's really cool to stand up in front of all you guys and do this. I'm what the military refers to as a gray area veteran. Karl hates that term. He told me that. I'm not that. I'm a veteran. But it took me a long time to kind of get there, and I'm going to go over that a little bit. So I was a young guy, high school, and a recruiter came to the school, and we didn't have a ton of money, and he asked me if I wanted to sign up. I get free school, and I get to join, and it's the National Guard, and you get to spend 1 week in a month and 2 weeks a year, and I thought, why not? That sounds like a pretty good deal. My folks aren't going to be able to pay to get me to school anyway. So I signed up and went to basic and AIT, and I don't need to tell all you guys what that was like, but it kind of introduced you to things. We learned what made the green grass grow, and we learned some things about right head church around there. Yeah. But it was really, you grow up real quick, right? You change, you get exposed to things that you didn't get exposed to as a civilian, especially as a high school kid. And I remember my first AT. We were just out training. I was driving the major around, and we had an incident. A young man didn't make it, and that story kind of stuck with me. I was part of that crew driving that major around and listening to the stories, and it kind of brought to full focus and realization what we were in for, right? I served until 2001 in August, and I got injured. It was pre 9/11. And they didn't really care that I was hurt. And I was working in the civilian world and in the military, and so they said, we'll give you an honorable discharge and everything will be good. And I couldn't prove that it happened at training. Lifting a radio, I was a communications specialist, E4 31 Charlotte, single channel radio operator. And I remember picking up the radio, and I remember it hurting, but I didn't say anything to anybody because I was going to get in trouble because it's a 2-man lift. You're not supposed to be doing that anyway. So I kept my mouth shut. Went on about my day, but I got my honorable discharge, and then a month later 9/11 happened, and a bunch of my friends, the 49th AD at the time, the Armored Division in Fort Worth, it's now the 36th Infantry Division, but a lot of those guys were deployed. A lot of those people that I was with went away, and I started getting kind of a weird feeling in my gut. I didn't know how to identify what that feeling was, right? It's just a weird feeling in my gut. I don't know what that is, but if I drink and do some things, that feeling goes away, so I'll continue down that path. And that story is for a different kind of meeting. But this is, it's kind of the beginning of where I went at that moment. And then a couple of years after that, I met my wife, Kate, my son. Bennett's with me today, but I met my wife, and I talked to her, and we got together, and she went through a lot of really difficult things with me, and getting sober and doing that stuff. And I remember I was at a meeting one time. They asked all the veterans to stand up, and I kind of stood up, and then I sat down again. And I didn't realize that I didn't feel like a veteran, right? What's a veteran look like? You know, Marine Corps veteran, Ranger veteran, you got all these people with great stories and these great things. Well, all right, but am I a veteran? I had to call my dad and ask him. I'm 23 years old, right? I didn't know if I was really considered a veteran because all my friends deployed and I didn't have to do that. So he assured me, no, you're a veteran. And I said, okay, well, thanks, you know, and I just let it go. And so then I started standing up when people would ask if you're a veteran, and okay, I can do that. And I remember meeting Todd. We were working, Todd is my best friend, and we were working at a trade show company together, and it was Veterans Day, you know, and they had are you a veteran? And I said, yeah, you know, and he talked to me about it. And I remember sitting at this table, and it went around the room, and kind of, this lady said, oh, you're a veteran? And she goes, where'd you serve? And I said, I was Army National Guard. And she said, oh, so you're not a real veteran? Okay, cool. I kind of let that one roll off my back, but it took a blow to my gut a little bit. Made my friend a little angry when he heard about it. But we were climbing, and we saw the flags for the Gallant Few, and we saw you guys out there climbing, and thought that was pretty cool. I mean, those guys are all, you know, I kind of stayed separate though, and we didn't really approach because we didn't know how to approach you guys. And then I remember approaching you guys, and Zach went straight to the car and got Todd and I a shirt and welcomed me. And it was a pretty great feeling, you know. But I'm kind of skipping ahead, so I'm going to back up to my life transitioning out of the Army. So when I got out of being a communication specialist, I went into to the culinary world, and I started waiting tables, and I started cooking, and I worked 80 hours a week. I worked 7 days a week. I buried myself in it. I met my wife. She's a single mom with our 18-year-old while I'm working 80 hours a week, you know. And our first kid was a 27-week preemie. He was born, he was 2 pounds, 1 ounce when he was born, and it was super scary. It's the scariest thing that happened to me after getting out of after seeing that young man. He was 19. I remember that kid was 19, and he had a son, and his wife was pregnant, and I listened to these officers explaining how they were going to tell this guy's family that he passed. And so that was really scary at 19. But now I'm 25, well, 27-ish, and my son's born, and he's in the hospital, and we're visiting him every day, and now I'm scared for a whole different reason and learning more about life. But you know, I worked through that business for a really long time, and we had our second son, and my wife and I were having a conversation about what we were going to do. You know, and I told her I wanted to be a good dad, and I wanted to go do these camping things, and I wanted to go hang out with my kids and have a good time. And she said, you're not doing that in the restaurant world, you know. So I got out of it, and I kind of switched over to this job. Now I'm in IT. That was after meeting Todd and stuff. And I'm working a few hours a week, and I have all this freedom now and all this time. And I don't know what to do with it. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit to the Gallant Few, and we approach these guys. And they welcomed me with open arms into the group, and we started climbing with them. And we got invited to the Spirit of Darby, right? And we go out to this adventure, to this event, and it was a really cool experience. I mean, I'm hanging out with, there were some operators there, and there were some Air Force veterans there, and some Marine Corps veterans. Nobody asked me, nobody batted an eye to me saying I was a veteran. They all accepted me right in. And I think that is what Karl is always mad about when they say the gray area veteran, right? Because we all signed up, and we all did what we had to do in that role. But we were out at that event, and we were going up the mountain. It's the last day of the event, and I'm walking next to Tim. And some of you know Tim, and some of you don't. But I'm telling Tim my story, and Tim's listening to my story, you know. And he's like, "Man, that sounds really hard." And I was like, "Well, I mean, it wasn't bad. It wasn't anything like what you guys deal with, you know." He said, "Dude, no, we're not going to do that. That sounds really hard." And that was the first time I really examined, you know, myself and what I am in this group of people, you know. And I went to I went to the top of that mountain with those guys that first time, and I wept on the side of the mountain. I cried. I hadn't done that in a long time. I was kind of feeling some weird emotions, and it was doing some things to me that I wasn't used to, you know, and I approached some emotional and physical things that I hadn't dealt with before. You know, it was the first time standing around this whole group that I actually felt like I belonged to the group, and it was really weird. And the next year, well, this year actually, I guess a few months ago, we were going up that mountain, and I was talking to Tim again, and I was telling him a little bit about some of the stuff I was feeling, and he goes, you know, when I talk to veterans and I talk to people, that feeling that you feel deep down, you know, is that shame, and it's always shame. And I said, well, no, because in AA they say it's fear. It's 100 forms of fear that you're feeling. He goes, no, it's the shame. And I started to evaluate that feeling, and he's right? That sitting down and standing up, not knowing if you belong, not knowing if this is your group and if you're a part of it, is shame. And I didn't get to go with my friends, and I didn't get to go with my brothers and sisters that were serving in the 49th at that time, and I carried that with me for a long time, and it took a long time to go through that. So now, in the Gallant Few, I've kind of realized my point and my purpose is to be here for all the other veterans. It's to be of service to people. It's to give back for all the people that have kind of given to me, you know. And I love cooking for everybody, and I love doing that stuff, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, but it's also being a shoulder. It's also being a support, and it's also carrying the load for the people that can. My dad's an Air Force Vietnam vet. He was an MP. When he came home, it was a different world. I know some of you Vietnam vets can remember that. And he said, you know, it's so silly. We were talking this last week. He goes, when I got out and I got home, there were support groups for all of us, for the Vietnam vets. And we'd go into those things, and these veterans would have themselves kind of ranked, these grunts that you didn't have the combat tours and the experience I did, and so I can't relate to you. So my dad didn't feel like he belonged either. And I've never really doubted him telling me that he was a veteran, but I know that in his mind, he has that same shame. He didn't like all the things he did over there. He didn't like all the people he saw. He didn't like who he was when he was over there. And he felt that, and he never identified his shame until years later when we talked about it. And then this last week we were kind of discussing, he goes, you know, that shame is exactly what I felt. And he did the same thing. He tried to bury that with outside resources. And my dad's got Agent Orange-induced Parkinson's. Tell me you're not a vet, right? But I love that man. He's my stepdad. He's 30 years sober, and he's the guy I lean on when things are really, really tough. I call him up, and I talk to him about that stuff. And he and I have kind of been examining this thought process. There was a civilian that told me, oh, you're not a real veteran. And we were talking about how much worse it must be for people that are getting out right now that didn't go overseas and have 2 tours. There's a lot of people that are vets that aren't combat veterans. They didn't experience the things that you experienced. Karl had some stories that are similar to that. He got out in different circumstances. He shared that. I'm sure you guys know that. But so I've been kind of thinking about what a veteran looks like, right? And man, it's kind of empowered me to get to the point where I can be proud of who I am today. I can be proud of my service. My wife is. My kids are. My friends are. All you guys. And so why am I not? It's weird, right? People tell you don't feel ashamed. Well, how the heck do you do that? How do you not feel it? And that's something else I kind of have been examining. You can't control how you feel, right? The feelings are going to come through. You're going to feel the shame. You're going to feel the anger. You're going to feel the pain. But what do you do with that? And how do you react to it is what defines us, right? It's what makes us who we are, and it's what helps us get through all that stuff. And I have no idea how long I've been talking, Zach.
Not long enough.
Not long enough. So thank you, Carl. But so I've been kind of examining that, and the thing that the Gallant Few gives me in that role is that no matter what I did then, and no matter who I've been before, I can step in and help these people now, right? And I can be here for the people that are around me today. Karl kind of mentioned the group that I hang out with that I'm teaching. I'm the coach for a group of the United Rocks, right? United Rocks is a community organization that helps kids with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and they teach them how to rock climb. And so these kids have autism, these kids have Down syndrome, they have different diagnoses, we call them. We don't call them disabilities or handicaps, right? What's your diagnosis? You ask a parent. And they have the same, I don't know, it's this weird feeling that the parents have when they introduce you to their kid. They do it in this kind of standoffish way, you know, and I can identify what that is. They don't feel comfortable in the world. And so when I approach those kids, I do it with that same with the things that I've learned through the years of identifying who I am, and just approaching them with an acceptance and a casual acceptance. I don't need to know. I don't need you to be embarrassed that your kid's making noise. I don't need you to be embarrassed that your kid's being loud. And then you watch the kids who they process this information and this rock climbing, and they get these harnesses on, and it's a whole brand new thing for them. They're scared, they're terrified, but they get on the wall and they can kind of shut all that out, and they can focus down on this thing that they're doing. And there's kids that sit there for 3 months before they can actually touch a wall, and then they finally get to the top. It's pretty cool to see. And it's a wonderful, wonderful organization, and I do that because rock climbing gave that to me. I started climbing when I got sober, 2004, to save my life. My wife, bless her heart, has watched me walk out the door and wonder if I'm coming home from a trip here and there. It's a dangerous sport we do. It's got its moments, but I love it, and it's my favorite thing outside of my family that I get to do. I get to be a dad, I get to be a husband, and I love that more than anything in the world. It's fantastic. My extracurricular activity, my hobbies, rock climbing, skateboarding, you know, all those things, paddling down a river, all that stuff is all the stuff that brings me happiness. But what do I do with that? Because otherwise it's just selfish. I'm just climbing and having a great time. How do I give back with that in my mind? And that's what the United Rocks organization does for me. And the Gallant Few, I love being of service for you guys, you know, and I love that. And I have to give that back because, man, you guys gave me something that I had never had before. I'm not ashamed to say I'm a veteran today. I know I'm a veteran. I'm not a gray area veteran. I'm not a National Guard veteran. I'm not any of that. I'm just a veteran. And I did my service, and I signed up, and I stood in front and said my oath, and I did those things. And I noticed it. I know I'm going to say this one more time, just because it's crazy. Because I noticed it recently too with all the National Guard deployments, and people were like, those guys are out of shape, just National Guard guys. You know, they're not real. And man, I think about that, and those same people are hearing that same stuff that I hear and that I heard, and I'm like, man, we got to stop the comparison. Doug can relate to this. There's a joke we say in the program sometimes, and it's you know, we get in there, I get into a meeting and I tell somebody, you know, this is the story that I had and this is the stuff that I did. And then the guy next to me goes, man, that's crazy, but I did this and theirs is a little bit worse. And then the next guy, man, that's wild, but I lived under a bridge and I slept in a box and it was crazy I was at the bottom. And then the guy next to him looks at him and goes, holy cow, you had a box? And that to me is kind of what we do in the veteran world. I mean, you're a veteran, cool, what did you do, National Guard? Yeah. I was a Ranger. Wow, man, that's pretty impressive. I was a Marine Corps guy, right? I'm in Corps all day.
Sure.
And then we start that comparison process, but you don't compare yourself. I mean, you're not worried about your comparison with me. I'm doing that to myself. And I know that there's people that are doing that to themselves, right? That they doubt their own stuff and they have their own shame that they carry with them. And I don't know, other than showing up, shaking somebody's hand, slapping them on the back, thanking them for their service. You know, thank you for your support. I know we talked about that, right? When someone comes up to you and they say thank you for your service, and we hate it. And we don't know what to do with that information. And so Karl suggests, thank you for your support. And it kind of puts it back on them, and that's worked for me pretty well. Since you said it, actually, I do that quite a bit now. But I lost my train of thought, so apologies there. But I know that showing up and shaking your hand and being there with you guys is the only thing I can do to share the support that you've given me back. And so I'm going to keep coming back. I'm going to keep showing up. And yeah, if you ask me to speak 4 days before and I don't have time to plan it and I'm nervous as crap, I'll show up and be here for you guys. Because man, you guys have given me that. And it's really, honestly, truly the most incredible feeling to lose that shame and replace it with pride. I'm a little shy, Karl, but I don't have much else to really share on that. So thank you guys very much for asking me.
I've got a question for you. Patrick?
I've never heard a gray area veteran, and I've been around a long time. What does that, without triggering you?
Not gonna trigger me at all. No. It's on
I don't know what that is. What
It's
is a
on my
gray area?
22.
I've heard of there is a gray area retiree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a reservist, just like you. You get out at age 52, and there's that space to 60 till you can start collecting, and they call that a gray area. But I don't know what a gray area is.
So I was in, and I should have said that. Sorry, I was in for here, I'll do that. But I was in for 4 years. And I joined in 97 and I got out in 01. So in order to qualify for full benefits, I have to be in until 2003.
Okay.
And so because I got out, because I got hurt, and they offered me the honorable discharge instead of the medical discharge, I don't qualify for VA benefits. I don't qualify for the housing benefits because I'm not, that's the paperwork side of it, right? And that's what that means.
You have every reason to be, in my opinion, to be proud of your service. And that moniker of veteran, if you will, with the VA, that's more of a legal constraint to pay things. But in my mind, if you got past AIT, you're a veteran. But that's my feeling.
Sure, and I mean, I agree with you now,
Okay.
right? But in 2001, I didn't feel that. It felt
I was
weird.
in the 49th Armored for 8 years, so I know how the system works.
Outstanding. Heck yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
What was the most significant event for you in the Spirit of Darby trip this year, and what did you get out of it?
Wow, okay.
Repeat the question for the.
So, what was the most significant event from the Spirit of Darby? So let's talk about the Spirit of Darby. We show up the first day, we set up camp, and then we get up the next morning and to acclimate to the altitude, which you're supposed to do for a couple days before you do our acclimation. We show up and we hike up Manitou Incline.
There was yoga.
Huh?
There was the morning of yoga.
Oh, we did yoga first, right, you're right, thank you, we stretched.
Before the incline.
Before the incline. So the incline was our acclimation. It's in the top 10 hardest hikes in the United States, but it's just our acclimation hike. The next day we rock climb for about 12 hours. And then the next day we rest, and then we go get up bright and early and we walk to Bar Trail, and we take off up the side of Pikes Peak, and we stop at 14,000 feet. What, 6 hours later? I think it was this
It's
year.
about 8,
I think
yeah, it's
8.
about 6.5 hours.
Yeah.
I'm never joining that.
We need drivers that are not hikers back
Yes,
there, so.
Safety Vic.
absolutely.
Safety Vic.
And so,
An
and
oxygen tank.
then, how's that?
An oxygen tank.
Yeah, no, oxygen tank. We have some of those needed sometimes. It's tough. We're keeping an eye on it. But so we stop out there, and then the next morning we get up and we've got invited to with the Wounded Healer Project.
Yeah.
Healer Project. Thank you. We get up and we got invited to a Lakota sweat. So the native Lakota tribe has given this gentleman permission to do a sweat in his essentially his backyard in Denver. So my most significant out of all those things we did was that Saturday morning, right? Friday morning. And it's twofold. There's reasons for that, but the sitting in a tent with 22 other veterans, and the singers in this shaman, I believe is the right term, but and doing these 4-door sweat is like, it's the hottest thing you've ever felt, right? The steam washes over you, you're sweating profusely, and there's 4 doors. You make it through the first door, and then they pause in between and people can share. And I am listening to some of the most, I mean, absolutely gut-wrenching things that people are dealing with. And we're in the dark, can't see each other. And we find out things about each other that we didn't know, you know? And so they close the door, and then we go through that, and you're processing that. And then they open the doors again, and then I'm listening to some more of these stories and some of these things that people are seeing and experiencing. And then they shut the door again, and then they do the last one. And there's something that happened in that the first time just transformed me. I mean, it was crazy. And then this time around, I got to sit in the front row, which is right next to these rocks, and we're talking hot. I mean, it's so hot. I mean, the hair on my toes and my shins burned off, right? Hot steam coming from these rocks, and I didn't feel it. And it was this crazy feeling of camaraderie and identifying self-awareness and knowing that in that moment, in that second, I was exactly where I needed to be and should be, and I didn't have any doubt, I didn't have any hesitation, I didn't wonder where else I was supposed to be. That was where I was supposed to be in that moment. That was the most impactful of the Spirit Guard. That's probably longer than you wanted an answer, but
Wasn't
that
long
was it.
enough.
Anybody else have any questions?
Perfect time.
Thank you, sir.
Nice job. The Lakota, when they do the sweat lodge ceremony, the sweat lodge represents your mother's womb. And as you go in, and it's not tall enough to stand up in, so you're crouched or on your knees the whole time. And they believe that through that process that you're connected to your ancestors. And as you pray and as you open up your heart, your ancestors talk to you. And it's absolutely amazing to go through. So, Zach, if you would pass out, give everybody one of those sets of Spartan Pledge coins. One of the things that we did a lot pre-COVID, and we got away from it after COVID, was the Spartan Pledge. Boone Cutler, who tragically passed away from a service-connected heart incident a couple of months ago, a very dear friend of mine. When Gallant Few started in 2010, he told me about the Spartan Pledge. And the Spartan Pledge is a promise that you make with whoever your battle buddy is. Doesn't have to be a veteran, but if it's somebody that you served with, that's more powerful that way. And it's an anti-suicide program. And the Spartan Pledge does not say, I will never commit suicide. What it says is, I will not take my own life by my own hand until I talk to my battle buddy first. And I'll make it my mission to find a mission to help my warfighter family. And Boone defined warfighters as anyone who has stood in front or behind the barrel of a gun for our country. So he counted EMT, right, police officers, anybody that that either carried a gun or went in front of a gun. And so this coin set, we're bringing the Spartan Pledge back. Boone's unfortunate death reminded us that we had strayed away from this. So we're putting a re-energized focus on it. And what we want to do is we want to do the Spartan Pledge every time we do an event. So when we're done here, we want to do the Spartan Pledge together. I'll lead you through it. And there's a particular way that we'll do it, and I'll show you how that goes. But these coins are a match. The reason there's two is they both have the same number on it. So when you look at the very top edge, the same number is stamped on there. So you give this coin to your battle buddy, and you keep the other one, right? So you guys are connected by the coins. The back side of it has the text of the Spartan Pledge. When the best friend of mine in the entire world, a guy that I grew up with, we went in the Army together, he was best man at both of my weddings. His name is Bill, and a lot of you have met them, and I've told this story a lot. He's given me permission. I actually wrote about it in the book that I wrote. Bill was going through a hard time. He was a Gallant Few board member, and he had disconnected from me. And he had an important job, and he had a lot of demands on his time, and he wasn't, in my opinion, as connected with the organization as I wanted him to be. But because of our friendship, I didn't feel like I could say anything to him about it. So I asked our board chair, would you talk to Bill? Let him know if this is too much, it's okay. He doesn't have to stay on here out of obligation to me. If he wants to step off, then that's okay. Board chair called me back the next day. Hey, I talked to Bill. Bill said, yeah, I need to step off the board. And I'm like, well, crap. Because I really didn't want him to do that. But now Bill stepped off the board. So I didn't communicate with him for probably 6 months. And a friend of his reached out to me, sent me a text message, and said, when's the last time you talked to Bill? And I said, it's been more than 6 months. He's got a lot of demands, busy guy. He really doesn't have time. And she said, you need to call him right now. Because something's going on with him. And so I immediately picked up the phone and called him. And when he picked up the phone, like you hear the weight in my voice now, I heard it in his voice. I heard the weight. And I didn't know what he was going through, but I said, are you thinking about killing yourself? And he said, nothing for a minute. And I found out years later, he was looking through his apartment for bullets for his gun. Because somebody had hid them from him because they knew that he was in a deep, dark place. So anyway, after we both composed ourselves, I told him about the Spartan Pledge, and he took it with me. And that next weekend, he was living in Salina, Kansas at the time. I drove up to Salina, Kansas, and we spent the weekend together. And I gave him a set of these. I have the other one on my desk. And about 3 or 4 months later, when we're talking now, every day I would call him up, or he would call me. Every day we're talking to each other. And about 4 months later, I'm sitting at my desk and I go, hey, I got my Spartan Pledge coin right here in front of me on my desk. And he goes, I have it on a chain around my neck. And I said, you guys have this, it's heavy. I said, you're wearing that on a chain around your neck? And he said, yeah, because every time I move, it hits me in the sternum and it reminds me. It's amazing, right? That's powerful stuff. So, Boone, Cutler, I know you're listening. You continue to save lives. So we're gonna do the Spartan Pledge. You'll have the opportunity to do one here in a minute. Before we do that, would you go to the next slide, please? Okay, next breakfast is on the 10th. We already talked about who the speaker is. Is there another slide? That should be like the last one. Thank you, that's the last slide. So before we do the Spartan Pledge, anybody have comments or questions? So the way that we're gonna do the Spartan Pledge is I want Zach to come stand right here. And Patrick, if you would put your hand on Zach's shoulder, and everybody reach out. So you guys gotta come in close, and you're gonna put your hand on his shoulder, and I'm gonna be up here in the front with my hand on Zach's shoulder. So everybody come up,
Stand up here.
and if you don't have to be in the front row, like somebody can be in the back row as long as you can reach Zach, right? And yeah, Don, come on up here.
You wanna go?
You can roll right on up here in the middle. Come on, Zach, put his hand on your shoulder. So the important thing is here, we're all connected, right? We're all connected. And Kelly, you can do it too. All right. I will not take my own life by my own hand until I talk to my battle buddy first. I will make it my mission to find a mission to help my warfighter family. That's it. All right?